Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we welcome you to this special broadcast, a collaboration of Theatre Roanoke College and WRKE Roanoke College Radio. Tonight we will be presenting you a slight adaptation of the radio play The War of the Worlds, made famous by Orson Welles. When this play was first broadcast, this day in 1938, many of those who tuned in after the announcement that this was for entertainment took it for fact, and it is claimed that as many as 1 million radio listeners believed that a real Martian invasion was underway. In New Jersey, terrified civilians jammed highways seeking to escape the aliens. People begged police for gas masks to save them from the toxic gas and asked electric companies to turn off the power so that the Martians wouldn't see their lights. Now, we don't expect any of that to happen tonight, but rather, we hope to honor this play on its 79th anniversary for the piece of art that it is and for the effect it had on radio and mass media as a whole. Now, without further ado, Theatre Roanoke College and WRKE Roanoke College Radio present The War of the Worlds.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Colquitt Center here at Roanoke College, we welcome you to the Hip Hop Hour. I'm your host, Jordan. Tonight I will be playing some music by Kendrick Lamar and Waka Flocka Flame. But we're going to kick it off with Bad by Wale on WRKE 100.3.
Is it bad that I never made love? No, I never did. But I sure know how to fuck up being bad girl. I'll prove it to you. I can't promise that I'll be good to you, 'cause I had some issues I won't admit. No, not having it, but at least I can admit that I'll be bad. No, to you. Yeah, I'll be good in bed, but I'll be bad.
This is breaking news.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observations and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. Until we have more, we will now return you to your regularly scheduled programming on WRKE.
Girl, the way you move it, got me in a trance. DJ turn me up, ladies get your jam. I'ma sip my Scottify, you don't even fast. And I'ma throw this money while you do it with your hands. Girl, drop it to the floor, I love the way you put it down. All I wanna do is sit back and watch you roll it up and see the bodies
in your jeans, Ken Wale B, Ken Roscoe Ski. Long hair, she don't care. When she walks, she gets this. Brown skin or a yellow bone. DJ, this my favorite song, so I'ma make it thunder.
This is breaking news.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested that the large observatories of the country keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on the event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to our regularly scheduled programming.
I know that it's good, won't you sit it on my taste buds? I get way too petty once you let me do the extras. Pull up on your block and break it down, we playing Tetris. AM to the PM, PM to the AM phone. Eat up your per diem, you just gotta hate them funk. If I quit your BM, I still rock Mercedes funk. If I quit this season, I still be the greatest funk. My left stroke just went viral. Right stroke put a baby in a spiral. Soprano C, we like to keep it on the high note. It's levels to it, you and I know. Tell them be humble. Sit down. Sit down.
This is breaking news.
We are now ready to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carly Phillips, a Roanoke College student studying in exchange at Princeton, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carly Phillips speaking to you directly from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through a giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he's in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Carly.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Carly. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be at the point nearest the Earth. In opposition, as we call it.
And in your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, although that's the popular conjecture for those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific standpoint, the stripes are merely the results of atmospheric conditions, peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars.
I'd say the chances are at least 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for those gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Thank you.
Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past few minutes we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carly Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to Salem for our regularly scheduled broadcast.
You know I'm back, like I never left. Another sprint, another step. Another day, another breath. Been chasing dreams, but I never slept. I got a new attitude and a lease on life is a piece of mind. Seeking to find I can sleep when I die. Want a piece of the pie, got the keys to the ride. And I'm straight, I'm on my way, get up my way. I'm running late, what can I say? I heard you died twice, once when they bury you.
This is breaking news.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada, Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars. This happened between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home, comes a special announcement from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we will have our commentator Carly Phillips give you a word description as soon as she can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we continue our regularly scheduled broadcast.
Can keep my hands on myself. Think I'll dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Guess my little baby girl is in need. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over.
This is breaking news.
We now take you to Carly Phillips at Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carly Phillips again at the Wilmuth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. I hardly know where to begin to paint for you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes. It's like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. It must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree it must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of... What would you say, Professor Pearson?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is... Well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please? While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mrs. Wilmuth, owner of the farm here. She may have some interesting facts to add. Mrs. Wilmuth, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mrs. Wilmuth.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing, and that professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mrs. Wilmuth, and then what happened?
As I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfways.
Yes, Mrs. Wilmuth, and then you saw something?
Not first off, I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
And then what?
Turned my head out the window and I was sworn I was to sleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo! Something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mrs. Wilmuth?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilmuth, thank you.
Want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right, that's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mrs. Wilmuth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in the field in back of us. Police are trying to rope off the roadway leading to the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spot on the pit where the object's half buried. Some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with a policeman. The policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Oh, Professor Pearson.
Yes, Carly.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth, and as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow.
The darn thing's unscrewing. Keep back there. Keep back, I tell you. Maybe there's men in it trying to escape. It's red hot. They'll burn to a cinder. Keep back there. Keep those idiots back. She's off. The top's loose. Look out there. Stand back.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good God! Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one. And another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
This is breaking news.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmoth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We now return you to Carly Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mrs. Wilmoth's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk. As long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. There's no need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who... Oh, yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. A flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means... Wait, something's happening. A humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame! Now the whole field's caught fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks of automobiles. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return you to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disruptions on the surface of the planet. We now continue with our regular scheduled programming.
We've people to see. There's all sorts of shapes that I bet you can make. When you want to escape, say the word. Well, I know that getting you alone isn't easy to do. With the exception of you, I dislike everyone in the room. but you're on the move and you'll probably be leaving soon. So I'm telling you, stop the world, 'cause
This is breaking news.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Army General Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You've just been listening to General Smith, commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. We've been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you to... Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we finally have established connection with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by Direct Wire. Professor Pearson.
Of the creatures in rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It is my guess that in some way they're able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carly Phillips, our Roanoke College student who was studying at Princeton and was reporting for us, has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia sanctioned outside Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here's a bulletin from State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Miss Holly McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the militia at Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We now take you to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry, without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It looks almost like a real war. There happens to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River, probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it will all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmuth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal. Kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why, it's standing on legs. Actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees, and the searchlights are on it. Hold on!
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by any army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invader from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest, strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from New York to Philadelphia discontinued, except routing some trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Philadelphia, Camden, and Trenton, it is estimated, to twice their normal population. At this time, martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. We take you now to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here's a bulletin from New York. Cables received from English, French, German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outburst at regular intervals on the planet Mars. Majority voice opinion, the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who's observed the Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above the treetops moving north toward Summersville, with population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use, although advancing at express train speeds. Invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countrysides. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here is a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up the second invading unit before a cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up the position in the foothills of Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex, within 10 miles of Plainfield. Here's a bulletin from Winstonfield, Long Island. Fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we have run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range, 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection, 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire,
140 yards to the right, sir.
shift range, 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection, 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire,
A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
quick, get the range, shift 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection, 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Fire,
Can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off a smoke.
what is it?
A black smoke, sir. Moving this way. Lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection, 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire,
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer.
get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection, 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
Army bombing plane V-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vaught, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Vaught reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight, reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine, already crippled, believed hit by shell from Army gun in Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy, black fog hanging close to the earth, of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now and they're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards, it will be over the first. 800 yards. 600. 400. 200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. No, the engine's gone. 8.
This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in the direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas mask useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use Route 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard.
2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R, coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception? K, please. Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you?
I am now speaking from the roof of the Colquitt Center at Roanoke College. The bells you hear are ringing to warn people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Main Street is still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid Interstate 81, hopelessly jammed. All communication closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. People are holding service across the quad. In the chapel. Now I look down the quad. Everyone running around. Professors, students, staff, and the like. Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowds like New Year's Eve in New York City. Wait a minute. Enemy now in sight. 5. Yes, 5 great machines. First one is crossing Main Street. I can see it. Hold on. Bulletin's been handed me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside Buffalo. One in Chicago. St. Louis. They seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine has reached the campus. He stands watching, looking over the campus. His steel, callous head is hundreds of feet high. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke, drifting all over Salem. People in the streets see it now. They're running for cover, thousands of them, dropping like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached the front quad. People trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now, the smoke's crossing Bartlett, Miller, 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
"2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. New York. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? 2X2L."
As I set these notes down on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I might be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding in the empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present, furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who lives at Princeton, and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself that I shall preserve human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to write, I must live. And to live, I must eat. I find moldy bread in the kitchen, and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time, I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil. But at length, there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning. Sun streams in the window. A black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm has passed over them. I venture from the house and make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vaguely northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature, a small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I share the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field. Beyond, the charred ruins of a dairy. The silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. Next day I came to a city, vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant hand sliced off its highest towers with the capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Newark, undemolished but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in the doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man armed with a large knife.
Stop. Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Oh, Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down to the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What's that? Did you hear something just then?
Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl into this doorway and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Oh, nah. They've gone on over to New York. At the night, the sky is alive with their lights. Just as people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform?
Yeah, what's left of it? I was in the militia. National Guard. That's good. Wasn't any war anymore where there's war between men and ants.
And we're eatable ants. I found that out. What will they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. They won't keep doing that. They'll begin catching us. Systematic, like. Keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't even begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun! All that's happened so far is because we don't have enough sense to keep quiet. Bothering them with guns and such. Losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. We've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress. Done.
But if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for millions or years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. Oh, if it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
And what is there left?
Life. That's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. I don't mean to be caught either, and tamed, and fattened, and bred like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I got a plan. We as men are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we've got a chance. We got to live and keep free while we learn, see? I thought it all out, see?
Tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us were made for wild beasts. And that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, well, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, running wild to catch their commuter train in the morning for fear they'd get canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents. And on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians, will be a godsend for those guys. Nice, roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. After a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Oh, you bet I have. And that isn't all. Oh, these Martians will make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks. Oh, who knows? Get sentimental over a pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
No. That's impossible. No human being.
Yes, they will. There's men who will gladly do it. If one of them ever comes after me, why...
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I got it all figured out. Live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. And then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, huh? We'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. That rubbish. Out.
And you meant me to go.
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Gotta make safe places for us to stay in, see? And get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays, right and left, and not a Martian in 'em. Not a Martian in 'em. But men. Men who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on the Martians. We'd turn it on men. We'd bring everybody down to their knees.
That's your plan.
You and me. And a few more of us, we'd own the world.
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. After parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel. I entered that silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder in several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in its jaws, and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. He made a wide circle around me, as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark, past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. From over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 60th Street, and from there I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their great steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. And suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all man's defenses had failed, by the humblest thing that God in his wisdom put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this last chapter of the record begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to see from my window the university spires, dim and blue through an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on green, where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch sightseers enter the museum, where the dissembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day.
This has been a presentation of Theater Roanoke College and WRKE Roanoke College Radio, War of the Worlds. This project was directed by Dr. Lisa Warren and sound effects by Mr. David Mulford. The role of Professor Pearson was played by Joseph Swift, Hannah Shipp played the role of Carly Phillips, and Ryan Hayden played the role of the surviving stranger. The role of the WRKE radio host was played by Jordan Kehoe, and I, Elijah Wilhelm, played the role of the radio announcer. The role of Mrs. Wilmoth was played by Hannah Winterstrom, Grace Dupree played Miss McDonald, and Abby Linkus played the role of General Smith. Alexandra Morier played Captain Lansing, the military commander was played by Kayla Corsi, and Abby Gray played the role of the Secretary of the Interior. The roles of the military officer and gunner were played by Gavin Casey and Grace Dupree, respectively. I would like to give a special thank you to Dr. Warren for all of the time she spent on this project with nothing in return, even during preparations for her fall show and while hosting a guest artist. Dr. Warren, this project could not have been done without you. Another huge thank you to the station superhero David Mulford for his help with the sound effects and editing, and another thank you to Rick Mattioni for his support and advice throughout the project. And finally, a thank you to you, the listener. We thank you for listening to this broadcast, and we now truly return you to your regular scheduled programming on WRKE 100.3.